we're going to watch a video on painting minis. So this one is by Midwinter Minis. And it's about how to build and paint your first Warhammer model, perfect for beginners. I have not watched a single video on miniature painting. I'm so scared of miniature painting. They're so tiny. I was opening a box and looking at the minis. They are so tiny. The head is like, I kid you not, it's like this big, the head. How the hell do you like define the nose and the eyebrows and the cheekbones? I don't even see. I can't even see it. How do you paint it? And such small detail, tiny, microscopic detail. Big shout out to Midwinter Minis. We're going to be watching their videos. Check their channel out. Give them a subscription, a like, and all the support for teaching us newbies how to paint minis properly.
Hi there, my name's Guy, you're watching Midwinter Minis, and in this video I'm going to cover all the steps you need to know to build and paint your first ever Warhammer miniature, and guide you every step of the way, from this to this. I've been doing this for years and years, and I've painted hundreds of models, probably over 1,000. I've made tons of mistakes, but in this video I'm going to do my best to help you avoid them so you can hit the ground running, truly enjoy the process of painting, and end up with something that you can be really proud of.
Oh, I hope so.
We're also going to be joined by my nieces, Erin, who's 11, and Kristen, who's 15, and they're going to be building and painting their first models right alongside you.
Oh, this is so cool.
I'm Erin, and I'm 11 years old. I have never painted or made a war thing.
Hello, I'm Kristen and I'm 15 and I've never heard of Warhammer. I'm sorry, Guy.
In the video description, you'll
She's
find
so
useful
real for
timestamps
this.
all the different steps, just in case you want to skip to the bit you're looking.
I love it. Somebody in the comments said that they're letting their 5-year-old do miniature painting. I mean, of course they're still learning and practicing, but like even 5-year-olds. Luton said that there is no chance his daughter is not going to be into Warhammer 40K, so it's just a matter of time until she starts painting the miniatures. I mean, maybe it's easier for a child because their hands and fingers are tiny, painting the minis. To them, miniatures are majortures, yeah.
Looking for, or watch it again later. Okay, let's get started. Let's cover the things you'll need for a basic miniature painting setup. You want a nice flat surface to use as a painting area. Either on a table, a desk, even a tray table will work nicely. If you're painting in the daytime, sitting next to a window to get some nice natural light is a great idea, but if you're painting in the evening, you might want to sit near a lamp so you can see what you're doing more closely.
We got lamps.
White
We're
daylight
streamer.
bulbs or LEDs are usually the best, as you'll be able to see the colours much more clearly than warmer, softer bulbs.
Ah, okay,
if you want to paint models, you're obviously going to need some paint. There are loads of different brands that make acrylic paint for miniatures, and they all have some good points and bad points. But for me,
yeah, I never painted a
the best
miniature
balance of
in my
quality,
life.
price, and good paint coverage is Vallejo.
This is Spanish brand.
Getting hold of a can of spray plastic primer. For most paint schemes, I would recommend getting a grey one, and we'll talk about why you need this in a minute. To get things going, you'll also need a paintbrush. I would recommend grabbing a set of cheap synthetic brushes if it's your first time. Lots of companies make gold Taklon brushes in good sizes for the hobby. I do about 99% of my miniature painting with synthetic brushes like this. They give you good control of your brush, but they're cheap enough that you don't have to be too precious about them. In the video description, I've linked to a cheap brush set that'll give you a good range of sizes. It's also quite important to have a few tools for assembling your models. Some models are push.
Okay, speaking of brushes, I have 2 thin brushes coming with the sets that I ordered. One that the melted igloo gifted to me, and another one that I ordered because I thought I desperately needed it. So I have 2 thin brushes already, but I feel like I need to buy more. I just didn't want to buy a whole lot for my first miniature painting session because I don't want to spend a shit ton of money. As simple as that. But I feel like, yeah, if I'm gonna do this seriously, I need way more. in makeup, there is this rule that there can't be too many brushes. Same in painting. So I also saw this technique of like dry brushing. You just like right, dip the dry thick synthetic brush in paint, and then you you get rid of the excess paint, and then you tap over a model, and you can just use a makeup brush for that. It looks kind of cool. I want to try that as well.
But others will need to be put together with glue. Plastic glue, sometimes called plastic cement, is the best thing to use for plastic models. Superglue will hold anything together, but the pieces may eventually break apart if you drop them or hold them too hard. You'll need a sharp knife to clean up your model before you glue them together. Maybe you or somebody in your house already has a craft knife or a scalpel. Be very careful when using something like this. I cut right into my thumb when I was about 10 years old trying to build an Imperial Guard tank, and I've still got the scar.
Oh my god!
To get the models out of the sprues, they come
that was a nice cut. He went like right through it like this. Damn, he still has a scar. But you know, it's a cool memory that he can tell to his nieces now.
Attached to a pair of hobby snips will be really useful. If you don't want to buy a dedicated tool like this just yet, nail clippers make a pretty good alternative. You'll also want a little jar or cup of water. I prefer glass jars, as you can more easily see when your paint water needs changed, and there's a much smaller chance of you accidentally cleaning your dirty paintbrush in your lovely coffee.
Why you dip
or
your...
worse, drinking your gross
coffee.
paint water. It's also handy to have a couple of sheets of kitchen paper on hand to wipe your paintbrush and clean up any spills you might have. You're also going to want a simple palette to mix your paints on. A lot of experienced painters use a wet palette, which keeps your paints usable for longer, but I just don't like them. I find it much easier to use a little plastic cut
controversial.
Like this. And the best part is, this is the cheapest type of palette too. Finally, it might seem obvious, but you're going to need some models. For your first mini painting experience, I would recommend a normal infantry unit from an army you think looks cool.
They're so cute.
I'm going to be painting one of these Adeptus Mechanicus Skitarii models. Kristen is going to be painting a Space Marine, and Erin is going to be painting a Necron Warrior.
Okay.
Right, so you've got all the bits you need. Let's start building your model. Most of the time, Warhammer models come on these plastic frames. These are called sprues. Now, each model is made of several parts. If your sprue has several miniatures on it, and is a part of a squad of similar models, sometimes parts are interchangeable, meaning you can choose whatever arms or legs or head you like.
These are so confusing.
But often, you'll find specific arms go with a specific torso, and some hands or weapons only fit on specific arms. Make sure to check out the instructions your model comes with.
And they're like colored. The mini is gray, but different parts are colored in like blue, green, pink. I still don't know what that is. I just looked over them very briefly a few times.
To make sure you're using the right parts. Once you've identified the bits you need to build your model, it's time to snip them out of the sprue. Using your hobby snips or nail clippers, carefully cut out the parts you need one by one. If you cut the model parts with the snips right against the piece, you might accidentally cut into the part.
Oh, so it has to be a long...
If you cut just a little bit further away, we can remove any rough bits later without damaging the model.
Okay, with the file or something.
Double check to make sure you've got all the bits you need, and then we can spend a minute just making sure the pieces are nice and clean and looking their best.
Tiny.
Using your sharp knife, carefully cut away any of the little sprue connection points that might have been left behind on the model. It's better to cut away little by little than too much all at once, otherwise you might damage the model. You might also notice that
I'm like, him cutting towards the finger makes me so anxious because, usually you cut out, I guess. But when it's so tiny, there's like, how do you cut outwards? You gotta cut inwards.
Pieces of your model have a very fine line running all the way round. This is called a mold line, left over from when the two halves of the mold pressed together. This can really easily be removed using the back of your hobby knife. You don't need to use a lot of pressure, just gently scrape away at any really obvious mold lines, and your models will look much better when they're all painted up.
I didn't know you could do
After you've cleaned up your model and removed sprue connections, you might notice that some areas have these little white marks. This will be hidden when we prime and paint, so don't worry too much. Okay, now we've got all the loose model bits and we know they're nice and clean. Now it's time to attach them. Dry fit your parts together to see where they actually contact each other, and then add a little dot of plastic glue on one side. Hold the parts together for a couple of seconds, and the parts will start to bond. If the parts are small, you can usually let go after about 5 seconds. If the parts are a bit bigger or heavier, you might want to hold them together for a little bit longer. Some push-fit models go together without glue.
I'm sorry, I was just thinking that I can't wait to glue my fingers together with the super glue. It always freaking happens, always. Like, watch me start painting miniatures and my fingers looking like all patchy and scuffed, like, how do you say it? Stains of mini glue and paint. And my nails, I need to cut them so that no shit gets underneath.
And they have these little posts and holes, but I find they often need a very tight squeeze to fit together properly, and sometimes you can damage your models by doing this. I prefer to snip the posts off and glue them together as though they were normal parts.
Okay.
When you dry fit your model, sometimes you'll see things that will obviously be really tricky to paint in the future.
This is so useful.
For example, on this Skitarii model I'll be painting, it'll be really hard to paint the inside of the coat without accidentally painting the legs. In cases like this, it's sometimes easier to leave them off, paint them separately, and then glue them together after you've painted them. This is called painting in sub-assemblies, and this is very useful for bigger, more complicated models. For this demo though, I'm going to fully build this model, just so you can see that it's not the end of the world if you've glued everything together before you started painting.
Challenging.
Oh, it's pretty easy,
I like
gluing it. Because you just put it in the little holes, and then you just stuck it in. Yeah, that's good.
Smart girl.
Now your model is all built and prepped. Now would be a good time to add some detail to the base before we prime and paint. There are loads of different options. Some bases already come with sculpted details in the plastic. Lots of companies also make cool texture paints that dry with a rough, rocky look, and some crack like dry earth. Erin decided to use one of these cool texture paints on her Necron base.
Is this sand?
Using an old paintbrush or a
This
coffee
is
stirrer,
sand.
apply the paint to the base, and if you get any on the model's feet by mistake,
know this one.
just use a slightly damp brush to wipe it away. Another easy method of adding texture is by using sand and little stones. This is what Kristen wanted for her Space Marines base.
Oh, cool.
Apply a thin coat of PVA to the model's base, place the bigger rocks by hand, and then sprinkle sand over the base until the surface is covered.
Isn't it gonna come off?
After this is dried, you can do it again to add even more texture to the surface and make it natural and uneven. And if any sand dried to the model's feet or legs, no problem. Just scratch them off with something like a cocktail stick.
I
If
hope
you
she
don't have any
paints it
sand,
pink.
little rocks, or any cool texture paints, you can use literal dirt. For my Skitarii, I'm just sprinkling over some dirt and dust that I scooped from my driveway.
This is wild.
Again, PVA
This is
glue
so
is
cool.
great for creating a strong bond over time, but superglue will make things stick instantly. Why not experiment with both methods, and I'm sure you'll find one you prefer. After an hour or two, your bases will be dry to the touch, and it'll be time to prime your model.
I really want to try using the actual sand and dirt. This is so cool. I already did a trip to the hobby store. I already bought stuff, but I'm already seeing some stuff that I want to, that I'm going to buy next time that I don't have yet. So I think my first miniature I'm going to just record, because like live streaming and painting for the very first time, yeah, that's content, but I'll be stressed as fuck. I don't think I'm going to be able to do this. So first mini painting, definitely recording, and then as I'm feeling more confident, I will I think I can do streams.
Now, I never used to prime my Warhammer models, and I only realised what a big mistake this was when the paint on some of my older models started scratching and chipping off. Priming adds a thin layer of paint that sticks really well to the plastic model, but it also acts as a really nice surface to lay your paint down on. Not only does the paint behave better when you actually paint, but it would also make your finished paint job much more durable. There are loads of fancy model holders on the market so you can get more control as you spray, but I just use blue tack or poster putty to stick my models to a strip of cardboard from a pizza box. It's free and it works.
Damn, this is cool how affordable this tutorial is.
Give your spray can a really good shake for at least 2 minutes. Shake and flip, shake again, swirl, flip, swirl, and a good shake to finish it off.
Damn.
This mixes the paint up
good
well
at
with
making
the propellant
cocktails.
inside the can, so you should get a smooth stream of paint with good coverage on the model. The aim of the game here isn't to totally saturate the model in paint, it's to give it just a light dusting. We don't want to accidentally fill in all of that lovely detail
so that it
by
doesn't
mistake.
leak, right?
Now head outside.
Just like a thin layer. If I didn't watch this video, that's what I would do too. I would just be like, you know, done. 2 minutes. But like probably there's a reason for that. So we're not going to question the pros, okay? So 2 minutes of shaking, that's a workout.
Holding the model about 20 centimeters or 8 inches away from the can, pull the trigger on the spray can while you sweep left and right. As you do this, rotate the model with your other hand, trying to hit from above and from the underside too.
Okay.
This is what you're aiming for here. All the areas of plastic that were scraped white, the model itself, and the base should all be a uniform
I won't be able
color.
to do this first try.
It doesn't matter if there's a tiny bit of plastic showing through here and there. Priming is always a balance of covering the model as best you can while preserving the detail and not firing too much paint at it. Here's a quick tip. I also prime my paint palette too. That way I can test exactly how the paint is going to behave on my model, but on the palette itself. Now when your primer is dry,
it's 200
time to
IQ.
paint.
I'm telling you.
If you're following an official color scheme, now's the time to get all of your paints together that you're going to need for your project. If you haven't quite decided, or you want to make your own scheme, just use whatever colors feel right with you. There aren't really any rules here. The most important thing is that you like it. I would recommend choosing a main color and then an accent color that works well with it and isn't too similar. If you need some inspiration, don't be afraid to look through a few books or jump on Instagram to see what color combinations other people are using. Kristen wanted to paint her Space Marine as a Hawk Lord, so she chose purple and gold.
Hawk. Fly Hawk. Hawk. Oh my, yeah, right, okay. I remember it now.
Erin wanted a spooky grim look.
Oh my god, you guys. I said painted pink. Painted pink. Girl. She understood the assignment. I mean, it's purple, but you know, not that far from pink. Some of these tips are so genius and are so easy. And like the tricks he's sharing also make this so much more affordable. Like sometimes you can just like skip on spending money entirely on something and just, you know, make stuff out of sticks and rocks. So that is very, very, very useful. And like, look at this. Like, look at this. Did you know that I bought a new one? Who would have thought that a trip to get some coffee turned into buying another one that I probably don't need, but I don't know. I saw it and I wanted it and I bought it. How many boxes do you have already? So I got gifted a kill team, right, with orcs and Death Corp of Krieg, and then I got gifted a big starter set by Melted Igloo with some Ultramarines and Tyranids, and then I bought the Custodians. Yeah. So I haven't painted a single one yet, and I already have 3 sets. Like, what the hell is this? I don't know when I will have time to paint it all, but yeah, I have plenty.
Look on her Necron, so she chose a really dark grey and a light bone colour.
Well, I just feel like it'd be very like creepy if you like saw that walking towards you. You wouldn't expect it to be like rainbow.
Now I want a traditional look with my Skitarii, so I went with red, grey and corroded metal.
Okay.
It's also useful to attach your models to something that'll make it easier to hold and turn while you paint. As I said before, loads of companies make fancy holders, but Warhammer is quite an expensive hobby, and I like to save money wherever I can, so I just use these little plastic cups with a bit of blue tack under the model's base. Okay, let's get painting. The best place to start is usually with your main colour, and generally you can paint this everywhere. You don't have to be that careful, as we can paint our other colours over the top of this one. To make sure your paint doesn't go on too thick and obscure details, or dry with weird streaks and texture, you'll want to make sure it's thin to the right consistency. Paint straight out of the pot is often much too thick to use straight on the model, but by adding water bit by bit, it becomes smoother to work with and covers much better, and it flows from the brush more easily. Be careful you don't add too much water though, as the paint will be really hard to control and runs
I guess if you're using a wet palette for this, you don't need to add water. I don't know how a wet palette works. And I don't think he's gonna be covering it in this video. So I might, to know how to do this with a wet palette, I might need to watch some other video. I'm so hopeful that I'm going to like this and start painting, because I need a hobby. I need a real hobby. Like, reading is cool. Like, reading is another cool one, but I don't have a hobby. Gaming, I game on stream. I play games on stream. I needed like a physical hobby away from screens, away from PC, away from the phone, away from all the digital shit. I need like a actual, you know. So if this is going to be it, I'm gonna be so freaking happy. So far, makeup has been my hobby, and this is like, you know, this is almost makeup, but like on tiny little plastic man dolls. So it works.
everywhere. Just add a little water, bit by bit, until it looks nice and silky, like this. When you're base coating, it's important to use a brush that's big enough. You might think that you need a teeny tiny brush to paint small models, but actually, I do the majority of my painting with size 2 brushes or bigger. They carry more paint, you can paint faster, and you can still be pretty accurate with them when you need to be. Using a tiny detail brush for base coating will take ages, and it'll drive you mad. Once you've got your first base coat painted on, it shouldn't take too long to dry. Most acrylic model paints dry in just a couple of minutes.
This would take me forever.
If you think it looks a bit see-through, or it's not really a nice solid colour, you might want to apply another thin coat just to reinforce it.
Okay.
Now we've got our main colour down, and before we start adding our accent colours, painting the weapons and stuff like that, at this point you might want to do something called dry brushing to add quick highlights to your main colour. Before we actually start dry brushing, we'll need a lighter version of your main colour.
Oh, that's what I said.
You can obviously buy a dedicated
the dry
paint
brushing
just for
is
this,
just like tap tap
but
tap.
don't be afraid to mix your own on your palette. So for Erin's Necron, we mixed a slightly lighter grey by adding a bit of white to the main colour she used. For Kristen's Space Marine, we added a bit of white and a tiny bit of red to the purple to make her a warmer pink.
What the hell? These girls are so good at it.
I'm adding a bit of yellow to my red to make it a little bit brighter and richer. Now we've got the right colour, let's start dry brushing. Grab a large brush like this with big soft bristles and dab it in the paint on your palette. Now start wiping it on your kitchen paper, working the paint into the bristles and moving it around until almost no paint is coming off on the paper.
Look how
now start sweeping your brush gently back and forth across the model. The lighter paint will only catch on the raised and prominent areas, leaving your original base colour in the recesses. As you can see, this is a really quick way of adding texture and bringing out detail. It might seem funny doing it now as we've only got one colour on the model, but as you can see, this is quite a messy step. And if you'd already painted some other colours, it would be really hard not to paint over them accidentally while you do this.
The dry brushing made it look so sick. It was really good, but don't use too much.
Dry brushing was really, it looked really cool when you put it on. Well, obviously it was 3D, but it looked like more real, kind of.
Now you've got a nice
they look more they have more dimension to them. A lot of makeup brushes. I could use some, you know, the ones that are not in such a good condition anymore, or like I don't use them as much, or they are on the cheaper side. I could sacrifice a couple for that.
Colour on your model. Let's go back to our standard brush and start blocking in the other colours we'll be using on the model. For the legs, torso and face of my Skitarii, I'm going to paint them a military grey colour. Again, get the paint on your palette so it's nice and thin and workable, not too thick, not too runny. And now, because we're going to be trying to be a little bit more accurate with our paintbrush this time, let's make sure the brush has a nice point and that there isn't too much paint on the brush.
I'm scared.
You can do both of these things in one easy motion.
The swirl.
Simply wipe your brush on your palette and twist it around in your fingers. There we go. The bristles are now in a nice point, and we've got just the right amount of paint on the brush. Now start blocking in your secondary colours, paying a little bit more attention on how you hold and where you aim the brush.
Yeah, definitely needs
it's
two
really
layers.
easy to accidentally touch a bit that you don't want to with the wrong paint colour, either with the edge of your brush or just if your hands are a little bit shaky. And don't worry about making little mistakes, I do it all the time too. If it's a tiny mistake, we can just go back with your first colour and tidy up the paint once it's dried.
Okay.
If it's a bigger mistake, you can use a clean brush, dampened with a little water, to draw the paint away while it's still wet. If there are any smudges left over, tidy it up with your original colour again. Every model painter does this back and forth, making sure their colours are in the right place.
Okay.
Even though base coating might seem like the simplest part, it often takes the most concentration, so don't be afraid to relax and take your time. If your hands are a little bit shaky, don't forget to breathe normally and sit in a relaxed position. Be careful not to hold your breath. It can also help if
That's
you
gonna
rest
be
your elbows on
difficult.
your table and touch your
Yeah,
wrists
like-
together to make a sort of anchor point. Every model is obviously totally different, but the process of base coating will be the same.
This
Just
paint
go
looks
around
so
your model
good.
with whatever colours you want for that
The
particular
metallic
area.
one.
Do you want your weapons to be silver? Go for it. Pouches and bags and boots to be brown? Now's the time. Kristen painted the trim on the armour a nice gold colour, made the weapons and Aquila on the chest a nice dark grey, and then picked out some little bits and pieces with silver. Erin made the head on her Necron warrior a spooky bone colour, and then painted the gun and cables silver. We also painted our bases too. Both Erin and I wanted a few areas on our model to be a cool blue glowing colour, but we're going to leave that just for now because the next stage will darken things down a little bit more. So far
Gonna
we've
add
covered
shadows?
base coating, fixing mistakes, dry brushing, and painting a little bit more accurately. Now let's learn how to use shade paints, sometimes called washes, to add quick definition to your models.
Washes.
I use
forgot.
either a brown wash or a black wash or both.
Oh, that's the
on
null
pretty much
oil
every
that you
model
mentioned.
I ever paint. They're much thinner and runnier than normal paints, and they're designed to seek out the recesses. So when they dry, the creases, cracks, and crevices are darker than they were before. They also stain the colour they're painted over a little bit too, but if you're using the right colour shade paint, I think it makes it look more grungy and realistic.
Damn.
To apply them, load up some wash on your brush and paint it over any of the parts you want to add shading to. It seems quite simple.
What a
and
life
it
hack.
is. As I said, I usually use a black wash and a
Just
brown
like
wash.
that.
The black wash is applied over cooler colours like greys, blues, purples, and silver or metallic parts.
And it's all
I
gonna
use a
dry
brown
like
wash on
this?
anything I want to give a warmer or dirtier tone to. Reds, browns, golds, even greens
Like this looks so wet. It's going to dry completely.
look quite nice with a little brown tinted shading. If you leave lots of wash on a model that has big armor panels or large smooth areas, it might start to look a bit streaky when it dries. You can avoid this by, when you've finished applying your shade paint,
Like, well, maybe
swapping
with
out
the
to
dry
a clean,
brush?
slightly damp brush,
Ah,
and just tapping the brush on the part where you want to remove the wash. The shade will be drawn up into the brush, and you
Okay,
can wipe
okay.
it away on the paper towel. Rinse and repeat, literally,
cool.
until you're happy with how your models look, and then leave it to dry. This will take a little bit longer to dry than regular paints, but after about half an hour it should be dry enough to add a little more detail if you want to. But if you just want to paint your models to a nice tabletop standard, this is a great place to leave them if you like. If
Okay.
you want to push it a little bit further, let's quickly talk about highlighting. As you can see, the wash
So like if you're painting a shit ton of models at the same time and you have a limited amount of time, like I guess this is fine, but if you want to go a little bit extra, and that's what we want, obviously, yeah, gotta add highlights.
stage has muted the colors a little bit, so you may want to bring yours back up on the key parts of the model just to add some vibrancy and help define some of the details. Let's quickly mix up a highlight color that's slightly lighter than our original base color. For example, I'm going to mix a tiny bit of white into the grey that I used for my Skitari's legs, and then using my detail brush, I'm going to carefully pick out a few of the sharp folds and details around his legs, being careful to stay away from the recesses.
This
We
is
don't want to
so-
ruin all that lovely shading we just did. This would be a good time to use a slightly smaller brush, and remember to make sure your paint is the right consistency
So
on your palette
stressful.
first. Not too thick, not too runny, and swirl the brush to bring it to a nice tip, and then paint. You can do this wherever you like on your model. This pushes the contrast between light and dark on your model too,
But yeah, like, but you gotta know some basics about, you know, the I don't know, painting, like where the light hits the mini, where the shadows are. It might seem easy, but a lot of people have no idea about it. So you either follow a tutorial step by step how to paint a miniature, or you're just like a professional artist and you just know how it works. Step 2, draw the rest on your own. I mean, what is he going to be teaching us the basics of, of painting and artistry? No, he said that you can stop already at the previous step. You don't need to go further. But if you want to go further, then, do your research. How to draw an owl. A fun and creative guide for beginners. Figure 1, draw 2 circles. Figure 2, draw the rest of the goddamn owl. Okay. Yeah, pretty much.
Making it look a bit more impressive and helping it stand out a bit more on the tabletop.
Ooh,
let me show you this process again,
cool.
But this time to make this cool blue energy glow. First, I'll base coat this small area of coils on the gun and also the eye lenses on this Skitari's helmet. Then I'll mix a tiny bit of white into that blue paint to make it kind of sky blue.
This already looks so
and then
amazing.
Paint just the raised areas, making sure to leave some of the normal blue visible underneath.
See, I think he's like using more the side of the brush, not the tip of it to do these. And that's a life hack. This is so much easier because the top of the brush, right, it doesn't go into the crevices. It just paints on top of the details that stand out. So he can just like go like with not the pointy side of the brush, but with the bam, 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 bam. Oh my god! Okay, I'm so happy that I see those things and pay attention to them. Oh yeah, that's for highlight. Is there like a highlighting technique? This is pretty handy too. I need to remember this.
Then I'll mix a tiny bit more white in and do another.
Oh no, maybe he actually
highlight.
uses the tip of the brush.
I might want to just do a single dot of white just on the sharpest parts to make it look really bright and shiny. I'll also do the same thing for the eye lenses, and Erin also did this effect on her glowing weapons too. You don't need to go overboard with highlights. Often just a few here and there will really sell the effect and make the miniature look a lot more striking. Now that you're done painting, let's give all our paintbrushes we used in the session a nice thorough clean in our water and then dry them off on the paper towel.
I wonder how often you have to change the water.
Now as you can see, we could definitely call it a day here. A cool looking model that's been nicely built, neatly base coated, dry brushed with texture, shaded and highlighted. Definitely a model to be proud of. Your box of models might have come with a little sheet of cool designs though. These are called water slide transfers. Basically, they're just fancy stickers that activate with water. Let me show you quickly how to use these, just in case you want to add some to your models.
Okay.
Choose the one you want to use, and cut around it carefully using some scissors or your sharp hobby knife. Now add a few drops of water on your palette, and lay the transfer in the water. After about a minute, give it a gentle tap with your paintbrush, and you should see that it's come loose from the paper.
How?
Lightly moisten the area of your model you want the transfer to go on.
Makes it look
then
so
very
easy.
Gently scoop the transfer up with your brush. Now carefully lay it in place on your model, and while everything is still a bit wet, gently poke and prod the transfer until it's in the right place. Now dry your brush off on your paper towel and lightly press on the transfer. This will absorb some of the water and stop it slipping around as it dries and fixes on. Now this is a notoriously fiddly process, but you've got a lot of working time, so just be patient and you'll get it eventually.
This is like, do you realize, okay, people who don't paint miniatures, people who do, I know you know, but people who don't, do you realize this is not a sticker, this is like a transfer sticker, it's different. Do you realize how tiny this is? Look at his finger, like his finger is almost as thick as the miniature itself. Like this is wild. How tiny they are. This is wild. I don't know. Like until I try it, I was looking at the custos yesterday. I opened the box and I was like, how do you paint such tiny miniatures with human fingers? Yeah, probably people who do this a lot, their neck hurts like hell.
It'll be dry to the touch after about 1 hour, but because they're very fragile, they may break or flake off if you touch them too much. To make sure the transfer holds for years and years, you might want to add some stuff called matte medium over the top. This is basically paint, but with no colour in it, and it dries with a nice dull matte finish, so it also hides some of the shine on the transfer too, helping it blend in.
Oh, that's
And
cool.
that's basically all you need to know to start building and painting your
like
very
varnish,
first Warhammer model.
matte varnish.
Here's my Skitarii model I've painted during this episode. But as I said before, I've been painting for years and I've painted a lot of models. But here's 15-year-old Kristen's Space Marine
Oh,
and 11-year-old Erin's Necron Warrior.
oh,
Both
that's
of them are
blood.
their very first painted models, and I think they did a fantastic
That's
job.
not bad.
If you look at the box
That's
art for
not
your
bad at
models,
all.
the fancy photos they use on the website or Instagram accounts of professional mini painters, it's easy to be put off when you're just getting into the hobby.
Yeah.
Your paint jobs definitely won't
I
look like
don't
these
want
the
to
very
look at
first time you
these.
try, and that's okay. Painting models is a skill you develop like any other. Playing an instrument, writing stories, playing a sport.
These
the
are
more you
so
do it, the better you'll
tiny.
get. To show you what I mean, here are some pictures from our awesome Patreon members, showing their earliest models compared to their latest models, just so you can see how you really do improve over time. And while you check them out, I'd also quickly like to thank our newest Patreon members, Sean Mayen,
Look at
James,
that.
Captain Carnage,
Look at that
Martin
thick boy.
Tiersgaard, Danny Moore, Ukrainian Smuggler, Paint Me Like One of Your Minis,
Paint me
Killer
like one of your
John
minis.
Who Streams, Matt Lee, Daniel Morris,
Aw.
Dan Orta,
This
James
is so
Vaughan,
wholesome
Henrik
that
Waddell,
he is
Stritchy Poo,
voicing every
Chris
single
R,
supporter.
Tyler Blair, Joe Brackenborough, Brendan Stevens, Hayden Cordill, Devon, Danny McElroy, Stuart Brown, Darren Wallazak, Thoughts for Your Thoughts, Chris Harris, Edward Pemberton, James Louch, Brandon Danger, Scott H, Anonymous Contributor, and Bat Flashes.
Wow.
I really hope you found this video
He
useful.
read them all.
If you're looking for any of the tools or equipment I used in this video, there's a list of my recommended stuff in the video description. Thank you so much for watching.
Thank
if you
you
made
so
it this
much
far,
for
you
this
might like to check
video.
out some of our other beginner-friendly painting
I
and crafting
will, I
tutorials.
will.
And I'll catch you next time. Bye for now.
Thank
Aw,
you so much,
this guy's
Guy,
so
and I
wholesome.
hope you've enjoyed me putting it together and painting it and making it look cool. Bye!
Thanks for watching. Bye.
Oh, this is so cool. The kiddos enjoyed it too. Yeah, this was amazing. This was my first official miniature painting video that I watched. It is great. It is great. Okay, so which miniatures I'm gonna paint first, you guys? I don't know. I think it would be wise to paint the ultramarines first, because I feel like they would be the easiest to paint. But I really wanted to do the, or at least try to do my kill team minis first, which is Death Corps of Krieg and the orcs. I think I'm gonna start with the orcs because they're the biggest ones and they will be the easiest to paint. These are the biggest miniatures that I have so far. So gonna start with the orc boys, then Death Corps of Krieg, and then by the time the Tyranids and I keep forgetting, I want to call them Space Marines. Ultramarines make their way over here. I'm gonna try them out too. So yeah, like a little bit of everything, and then, you know, as I have more time, I'm going to finish each of the mini armies or squads that I have, teams. Is there many of the Emperor? Oh, that's a good question. There's no Emperor mini. The Emperor mini would be huge, probably. Wow, is that the Emperor? What the hell? This is so detailed. It looks cool. It looks cool. But wouldn't he just be golden? I've never seen the Emperor in any other way than, you know, wearing golden armor. The cape, I don't know what color the cape is. Red, maybe. Dark hair. A burning sword. The eagle. Damn, this is sick. Look at all the detail. Yeah, this is a third-party mini, but you know, make those for themselves, like not to distribute them or anything, but just like to paint and have fun. I don't see anything wrong with it. kind of not dead because of the orcs. Yeah. Oh, so it's not the golden throne. It's not the 1,000 psyker souls being fed to power the throne daily. It's actually the orcs manifestation that is keeping him alive. How did I not know this before? And this is so easy. How did I not? Thank you so much for watching, and a special thanks to our members and Patreon supporters. Bye bye.